here we are. We are rescuing Arlos. So this is the quest entrance that we went in before, but this will take us to the part 2 in the quest, which is kind of nice. Not all the quests in the game do this, so keep that in mind. Some quests, if you jump out of the quest after finishing a quest and you want to continue on to the next quest, you will have to repeat the first quest. This quest isn't that way, but I think Tangleroot actually is that way at a certain point. So something to be aware of. You may have to like continue on and move on to the next quest. Just be aware, you know. We may come back to the entrance here and call our hireling, but I really don't want to bring the hireling unless we absolutely have to. And just so you know, there's nothing here. You can't go in there. It's just the entrance, you know. But anyway, I was just thinking about mechanics of the game, of different role-playing games, and I don't mind, like, you know, I played a game called Top Secret for a long time when I was growing up. It's a TSR game, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was an incredibly fun game. I loved that system. It was one of the best tabletop RPG systems I've ever played. It used percentages, so you had percentile dice for everything, and for all your skills and for your dice rolls. I really liked that because D20s are only 5% increments, which is, you know, it's not very specific, but you know, it works. And most dice rolls you can break down to a percentage. You know, a D6 is basically 16.66%. You know, so you know, or 16 2/3, however you want to look at it. A D8, again, it's like, you know, it's 12.5%. Everything you can see as a percentage, and that's kind of how I see things. Is like, what's the chance of this happening? You know, what dice do you want to use to symbolize that chance? A D4 is a 25%. A D3 is a 33%. Oh, he's got magic missiles, so I got to be aware of that. Now I might want to buff myself for that. I do have a shield wand on me still. But you can see magic missiles are like unerring. You can sort of avoid them if you go around a corner a little bit. You know, the line of sight can kind of like stop them from landing, but you don't get that often. You know, it usually doesn't work towards your advantage. By the time you are getting shot with them, unless you see a pattern forming, it's really hard to avoid them that way. Anyway, not a big deal. They didn't hit hard, so. But you know, I was thinking about game mechanics and what would work well for a game I like. You know, Top Secret had body hit locations, which were awesome. The problem with that is you have to make a game where the weapon damage does enough, and there's enough, say, hit points or health points locationally that work around to make some sense. You know, because you know, one thing about Dungeons and Dragons is hit points aren't necessarily your health. When you play Dungeons and Dragons, by the way, I'm going to go down below here and swim. When you play Dungeons and Dragons,
you notice a wooden hatch beneath the surface of the water.
Hit points aren't strictly your health. Now in this game they might be, this version of this game, but it's not your health only. It's like your stamina, your luck, divine intervention, all these different types of things are.
Your spine tingles as you hear the low moans of the undead.
Ah, it's undead. The zombies. These aren't the rage monkey virus zombies, so we're alright. These are kind of like Walking Dead zombies, except you don't have to shoot them in the head. But anyway, so Top Secret used like hit locations, and in Dungeons and Dragons, original Dungeons and Dragons, it says, you know, Gary Gygax's, you know, own words or whatever. It's basically hit points aren't just your physical endurance or your physical your ability to withstand physical damage. It's also stamina that wears away. Like, imagine I think he uses like the analogy of like a fighter in a boxing ring or something like that, a guy fighting, and you know, goes through like 12 rounds of a fist fight in the ring, you know, and you know, it only takes like one hit really to take the guy out. But you know, if you're not, say, critting the guy, say he's not getting critted and taking enough of a hit point drain to knock him out, or you know, whatever, you know, give him the KO, then basically it's just a war of attrition. It's like this wearing down of somebody's stamina and their and such. You know, like their stamina, their willpower, their endurance, and all these different types of things. You know, their physical luck. You know, things are and divine intervention. All these different kind of things that are woven into, like say, the pie chart of your hit points. You know, what makes up your hit points. So when you do hit locations for a system like that, to me it could be problematic if you're trying to go for like realism, say verisimilitude or whatever you're trying to shoot for. So I've been thinking about like a lot of ways to make a game that could give you hit locations, but also be something that, you know, could be campaign doable. Because one thing about Top Secret, the only thing that you could do, I'm trying to Q spam here. I know there are barrels down there. Let's check over here. These things add up for there's a door. Targeting the door, but you can actually target. We used to be able to target. Maybe I gotta jump down in there. Let's see. You gotta target it first and then swim up to shoot it. Alright, let's see. I can't quite reach that side. There are several barrels down here, probably 5, maybe 6, 7 of them. So what we'll do is, we know these are targeted right here. So if we look down, nice. He's auto targeting it, so he's trying to shoot it. There you go. It's weird because I'm not able to Q spam it like I used to back in the day. Used to be able to Q target those. Anyway, there's a couple more over here. I'm just trying to get the ransack here, and for some reason I'm not able to. See, I can't just target those, but anyway, we got something out of that one. So what I'm trying, maybe this is what I'm doing, is using the Q button, or for me it's just I push down on my right joystick and it does that. But sorry, I have my Q button map. Alright, so again, I'm not sure. I am Q spamming it, but it's not, you know, I'm spamming that Q button, but I'm not able to, you know, see any barrels here. And it's funny because I can target stuff that's up above the water, but below the water it's not doing it. That's never been the case before. Alright, there's one more barrel there. Alright, so we've got one more. Ooh. And yes, you do take damage when you run out of the blue bar for the breath. So you want to avoid. There we go. Alright, so when you walk in here, real quickly, you can go right, straight, or left, and left is west here for our intents and purposes, but I always go this way, sorry, east, no, or left, you know, where we pop out of. So I hang a left, and then I go, when I come back, I usually go straight across to the west, and then I do that side, or, you know, but there's no, like, best way to do it. You just do what you want, but it's always good to at least do this first, because this is more like a backtrack kind of side here if you don't do this first. But yeah, the Top Secret was a great game, and it uses percentile dice basically to resolve combat and do skill checks and all that kind of stuff. And I really like that system. And I was trying to think of like making a D&D system, kind of a medieval fantasy kind of system based around that idea of you know, percentile dice and hit locations and stuff. But again, when you're playing heroic, you know, fantasy heroic type of game set in the medieval time period, you know, where you're having these big fights, say like Aragorn fighting a bunch of orcs like in Lord of the Rings or something. It's not very believable for one person to go out there and fight, you know, 20 or 30 Uruk-hai orcs who are bred for war. Even if he has a great ranger and he's got all these abilities, you know, it doesn't seem very realistic for someone to survive that fight just because of sheer luck. You know, there's only, you know, in combat there's a lot of randomness going on, or, you know, you could chalk it up as being luck. And in real life, you know, like, there's just no way you're going to survive a lot of combat like that unless you're extremely disciplined and highly skilled, more so than your opponent. And I mean, you have to be a lot better trained, a lot better geared, and a lot better. I mean, like, you know, like a medieval. Here I'm talking, you know, stuff here. This is just my opinion, but in medieval fantasy, you know, it compared to like medieval history, there's a big separation of the two. You know, as far as the ideas, you know, historically speaking, a knight in armor, you know, a man clad in full plate was a tank on the battlefield in his time. He literally was a tank. Like, you know, he could easily take on in a single fight probably 10 opponents and slay them or injure them on the battlefield and not get injured himself or not get killed himself in that process of taking down 10 opponents. Because he's generally fighting footmen who aren't clad in
You hear
full plate
human
now.
voices begging for help from the other side of the door.
However, you know, if he's fighting 10 people in full, and they're, say, you know, serfs that have been, you know, called up to fight in the King's War or whatever, so they're coming out in their peasant clothes, and maybe they have like a wooden shield or a pike or a sword, a spear, whatever, and they have, say, some leather armor at best, or maybe a little brigandine or something like that. And here's this guy, this full plate with, you know, padding and chain and everything underneath of it. It's just one of those things that it doesn't take that many people to trip the guy, rip his helmet off, or stab him through an eye slit. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's once you get hit one time with a lethal blow, you're dead.
The prisoner
Simple as
thanks you
that.
for freeing him.
Whether it's
runs off to safety.
These guys are just additional people we can free, but you get XP for it, and this is a intelligence rune, I believe. But I think you guys get the point. It's like, you know, fantasy is definitely different than reality, and you have to kind of find the sweet spot between the two when you're dealing with like a medieval fantasy role-playing game, because obviously you're dealing with swords and sorcery and magic and all that kind of stuff, and you want it to be believable and kind of realistic, but at the same time, if it was realistic, you know, your character would probably never get past level 1. You know, let's just be honest. Like, because basically you don't, in real life, you don't gain hit points. Like, you know, you never get really that much tougher in real life, you know. It's not about like what weapon does most damage. I mean, in real life, a dagger, even a rusty shiv, can take somebody out just as easily. And I'm talking like a 20th level fighter versus like not even a level 1 character. If you wanted to be realistic, that 20th level fighter, if he was sleeping, say he was in a tavern, and he rented a room like most characters do in role-playing games. You rent a room, you call it a night, you even set up guards and stuff for the night. So let's say a wizard comes in there and he has the ability to cast a sleep spell. Well, back in old school D&D, there wasn't even a saving throw for a sleep spell. It was just bam, this many hit dice are put to sleep, you know. So, you know, let's just say that wizard was able to put a 20th level character to sleep, or was able to drug him while, you know, maybe he's working as maybe he's an assassin wizard or something. He's working as a barkeep or a server at that tavern that particular night because he's on a mission. He's been hired by the Assassin's Guild to kill off his 20th level character. Well, you know, it's kind of what they call the coup de grace. The coup de grace is, or
deep
coup de grace
along
is
the wall that crudely spell out the word bloodletter.
It's a one-shot. You know, basically once you're asleep, I mean, there's no way you can defend yourself. And that guy takes a rusty shiv. You know, he could take a butter knife and kill you. He could take a freaking stick and kill you. All he has to do is get your carotid artery, or, you know. So it's kind of like those things. I think about game theory and stuff like the medieval fantasy role-playing games. Like, how do you make it have that kind of realistic feel, but obviously, you know, don't have those kind of things happening where, you know, there's a lot of griefing going on between the dungeon master or the game master and the players. Because, you know, everyone's going to be upset if their character dies. I mean, actually taking some damage here, aren't I? But everyone's going to be upset if their character dies, right? You don't want your character dying, you know, you want to survive. if a character does die, you know, you don't want to get too upset about it because, you know, obviously it's like just a game, and it will Tesla coin. So we'll be going to the cookie vendor guy here in a second. I just want to show you here that lever. If you do get in here and it locks you down, a lot of melee characters will get locked in here, close range characters. But if you're ranging them, you don't have to worry about it. That gate will come down if you walk in here, and it's basically like you're stuck in here fighting these guys. But if you have, you know, a person that can come over here and pull that lever, then you can basically get yourself unstuck. And I always like hitting the warning gong. Just something I like to do. You know, you can get a, you know, conquest this way perhaps, you know, but I just like doing it just because it's fun, you know. Fun hit the warning gong. Anyway, what I was saying earlier was get that again. I'm always rambling when I play these quests, but we do have a couple, at least one shrine in here. Yeah, 2 shrines in here. So we can get some more expeditious retreat when we need it. In fact, I'll probably just hit this one now. We have 2 of them we can use. Let's go ahead and get this, get healed up, and that way we don't have to use any potions or anything. Only if catacombs would have given me my eternal wand. Oh, anyway, that would have come in handy for just topping off. You know, we'd just be casting that on ourselves. 50 charges, averages about 75 hit points because you get 122 hit points per charge with 50 charges, and it regenerates over time. So 75 hit points, you know, we would easily, probably only like 10, 15 charges, maybe 20 charges, been able to peel that off. But again, going back to game theory and stuff, it's like, yeah, you know, it's kind of like how realistic do you want it? Because if you get too realistic, combat and things like that really slow down, and it can be kind of boring. You know, you can have a fight with, say, like 2 or 3 goblins that could take you 3 hours to resolve in a pencil and paper format. And so I think we'll go down this way first. I normally don't go this way first, but I thought, oh, by the way, when you first pull these levers to open these bridges, wait a few seconds, because even though you see the bridge down, it's not really down. Like, you can fall through it. The physics of the graphics haven't locked this down, so it's actually not a floor. It's just basically, you know, you can fall through it. It's kind of like transparent. It looks like it's down for that, you know, initial second or two, but it's not. So be careful. Not all bridges work the same. Some bridges are, you know, not buggy like that, and some are. But be aware of that if you ever. There we are again, shooting like 18 arrows and nothing's happening. It's getting old, man. I tell you, sometimes I shoot so many arrows and there's no roll for it. I don't know, like, if that little arm was blocking it, but right there, that guy was in the same spot and he got hit. So I don't know. So I was thinking about this, like this, whatever this is not. I called it an arm, but it's like a little flagpole thing or whatever, banner. But the other guy was right here, and I shot, you know, 8, 9 times at him, and none of those arrows hit. They weren't even getting rolls either. They were just, nothing was happening. Yeah, but talking about mechanics, it's like, how do we do this? Yeah.
This appears to be Clan Gnashtooth's main prison.
How do you make a game where the combat seems realistic, but is also quick to resolve, and isn't metagamey feeling? You know, it's kind of like kind of have to have like a blend of different things. Because, you know, like in this video game, like, there's a lot of dice rolls happening, a lot faster than you would in a conventional pencil and paper game. You know, you would have to. The amount of combat we're doing here would take hours of pencil and paper to resolve if you were doing it by the book, old school, new school, it doesn't matter. It'd just take a long time, and probably even longer if you were doing something like a Pathfinder 3.5 type rules, or even like 4th edition or something, because those kind of games were very tactical, grid format type games. I think old school you might be able to resolve this a little faster, but it wouldn't be that much faster, really. There's a lot of I mean, look at all the things we've killed here. 78 monsters. Yeah, I mean that's probably like 4 or 5 sessions worth of monsters we've killed in a pencil and paper game. At least when I've DM'd or played games, you know, you don't usually kill 78 things in one session. You know, one 3-hour session of pencil and paper. So anyway, just little ideas, but yeah, I like talking about RPGs. It's, you know, it's a hobby of mine. So, and now when we get into this area, this is where we're looking for Arlos. You know, you can see we need to free some of the prisoners, but we need to get Arlos too. Arlos is the primary objective. If you get him, he's gonna follow you, and he could get killed by some of the respawning or already, you know, already spawned kobolds. So you want to save him for last. Just like leave him. If you see him, just leave him alone. If you've ever played this in, on Elite, especially back in the day, you can have a failed quest just because of that one simple thing. Because unlike these bedraggled prisoners,
Prisoner thanks you for freeing him.
Arlos will
Runs
actually
off to sea.
follow you and stay next to you. He's kind of like he basically becomes similar to a hireling, except you can't give him commands. You know, you can't say like, you know, stay here and move here. He's just gonna, whoever talks to him, he kind of stays with that person and follows that person. Alright, here's another bedraggled. One of my friends, he says bedraggled. Can't explain that word. But this is really, you're starting, I think you guys are starting to see the advantage, even though it's kind of buggy in this lately with the kind of lag or latency we're getting with our shots. But I think you guys are starting to see the advantage of playing a ranged character. A lot of the quests, especially at this level, are going to be like this. I mean, dungeons with a lot of territory to cover, with a lot of long corridors, and you'll get a lot of shot opportunities at range where you don't have to really get close and engage the enemy. So, just like real life, the guy who can shoot farthest usually wins. You know, like kind of like that old saying, the AT&T in the old saying about reaching out and touching someone. You know, but snipers can reach out and touch someone, and tell you what, you know, it takes one shot. You know, I kind of see dungeon crawling like a special forces mission, like an operation, like a Black Ops or a Navy SEAL type of mission. You know, and that's how I've always envisioned it. It's probably hard for me to role play. I mean, I can, but it's kind of challenging for me to role play a Dungeons and Dragons character that doesn't look like dungeon crawling or going into a dungeon with that kind of mentality of being like a good Boy Scout. Always be prepared. You know, have somebody, you know, always covering your six. You know, have guys always, you know, in cover formations. You know, whether it's like 2x2 or whatever. But you know, looking at it more militaristically, because hey, combat is a big part of Dungeons and Dragons and all these games. It's probably the biggest part of it. I mean, the role-playing game, you know, is partially chit-chat about role-playing and playing out your characters, but there's a lot of it that deals with, you know, fighting and combat, and it's part that I think most people play the game for, because it's fun to get in fights and kill monsters and fight wizards and, you know, warriors and, you know, arena combats, whatever type of combat you end up getting if you're fighting a dragon. That's fun stuff. It's challenging, it's fun. You know, you have to come up with strategies, you have to work together as a team, talk about your strategies and stuff. And yes, there's some metagame going on that. I like Dungeons and Dragons, maybe more old school, like, you know, white box, red box, first edition AD&E. It's kind of my thing back. I like the games back then. They had a feel to them that I don't see so much nowadays. That Ogre 2 ring is not too bad. Alright, so we've got, you know, if you notice, I was kind of backtracking after pulling levers and stuff to, like, basically confirm things. But we've got basically everything open now. You know, we've pulled all the levers and stuff. So basically, we just got to get him out of here. And again, we're still getting that minus 10% penalty. You know, right now though, I think I read that there's a bonus going on. I don't know if I see it here. Yeah, all experiences currently scale by 10%. I didn't even notice that the other day, but so really, technically, we're getting full XP for all this because we're getting hit minus 10, but we're getting it negates the plus 10% for take it easy. Okay, where are the worms? There we go. Follow this. All right, follow me. Follow me, Arlos. Now, Arlos, I believe, like any NPC, you could buff him up. You know, he's a CR4. I don't know if since he's in my presence, if he gets a buff to his hit points, because you really can't see his hit points or his stats. But you could technically cast buffs on him. So say like this Wand of Bears Nurse, I'll just show you. That should land on him. I don't know if it did or not, but it doesn't seem. Okay, now you can tell him to stop, I guess, but he will stay with whoever has a dialogue with him. So since I've talked to him, he's going to stay with me. But oh, there it goes. I think the first one just dud it, but you saw it cast over him. Now he has that on him, so he has a little bit more hit points now. He's got +4 con, so it'll give him a little boost. You know, probably 8 hit points or so. Anyway, go back to our bow. And we have that bridge down over here, so we're going to go over here. Just backtrack away. And that large chest there is always that blue one. That dark bluish colored chest, the glittering chest. That one's always there. If you guys haven't played this before. So you kind of know where that is. And that one is too, by the way. And like I said, there's often some kobolds down here that you have to deal with, so just be ready to fight stuff. Oh, and all these bridges come down too, I guess, so yeah, forget about that. So anyway, that's about it for this one. You just escort him, don't let him get killed. If he gets killed, you'll see it, not a check, but you actually get an X here, and the quest will fail. So don't let that happen. You know, if you're running, make sure you don't run through the traps. If you can't disarm the traps, be careful how you go through the traps.
Once more, Arlos dashes off towards the surface and safety.
Okay, so that is the end of part 2. And I'm going to go sell and repair and do all that stuff, and then we'll go back and to the other side of the waterworks. I'll probably show you how to get to that side, and then we'll pick up part 3 and 4.